In the spring of 2019, Sir David Attenborough was accused of deceiving viewers when he claimed, in his Netflix documentary film Our Planet, that hundreds of walrus had fallen off Siberian cliff tops as a result of recent low summer sea ice blamed on climate change.
These mass gatherings of walrus are now happening almost every year. So the lives of walruses, like those of polar bears and seals, are changing. All are living at the frontier of climate change, and all are suffering as a consequence.
However, evidence from the scientific literature showed that this was not a new phenomenon. For more than 100 years, walrus have taken to land during the ice-free season. There is also evidence from the 1990s that walrus naturally fall from cliff tops even without the menacing threat of polar bears, aircraft, or drones.
It is a sight both disturbing and puzzling. Massive walruses plummeting to their deaths along the Alaska coast.
The footage Attenborough used to make his Netflix case seemed to have come from a well-documented incident in September 2017, when walrus had been driven over cliffs by about 20 polar bears.
It's just so heartbreaking.
However, both Netflix director Sophie Lanphier and cameraman Jamie McPherson insisted there were no polar bears in the vicinity at the time they shot their film footage.
They're exhausted because they're having to swim 100 miles now to get to food, and then coming back here because it's the only place to sleep. They used to sleep on the ice, dive down, eat the food, sleep on the ice. Easy.
Back in April 2019, it seemed unlikely that polar bears were not involved. Now it's abundantly clear that they were. Footage of the events on the Arctic coast of Siberia for the Netflix production was shared with the BBC and used in Attenborough's new TV series, 7 Worlds, 1 Planet.
The bears have got up here too.
The BBC installment shows that falling walruses had been driven off cliff tops by polar bears, but this action was not included in the Netflix film.
Just the polar bear's presence is enough to spook the walrus.
The BBC episode also depicts the falling walruses provoking a stampede of animals still on the beach, and explained that many walrus were trampled to death in a frantic rush to the water.
As one crashes on the rocks, those on the beach stampede, and more lives are lost.
This previously unreleased footage contradicts the account of events given in the Netflix film, and the stories subsequently told by Lanphier and McPherson since the film's release. Attenborough seems to be tacitly admitting that the claims he made in the Netflix film and the denials that polar bears caused the events were untrue. The field crew must have been aware that polar bears had frightened walrus over the cliff at this location because they filmed it happening. This new footage shows that not only were the walrus most likely spooked by polar bears, but that the filming itself may have contributed to walrus deaths. The film crew was situated at or near the beach, which was the only safe route down from the cliff. Their presence at that location, with their drone hovering above the cliff, could have been enough to spook a few more agitated walrus into a panic. It now seems apparent that the film crew withheld their involvement with the polar bear stalking incident until now, and that the Netflix film badly misled the audience. Polar bears were indeed involved in these walrus deaths, but so too were the crew and the drones used to film the action. Lack of sea ice did not precipitate these events, despite both films claiming this as the causal factor.
These events only occur once every few years. But as the world warms and the ice retreats still further, they may become more frequent.
Valid questions raised by a qualified scientist and others were rebuffed by the film crew, and journalists failed to investigate. Now those concerns have been vindicated. If natural history documentary filmmakers had stuck to natural history rather than political messaging, and if broadcasters had permitted debate and criticism to feature in their films, perhaps these errors would not be made so often.